I'm going to go off the video.
Welcome to our monthly Zoom meeting. This month, our guest is Kitty Bucholtz.
Yep.
I got it right. Thank you. Kitty writes superhero, urban fantasy, and romantic comedy, often with an inspirational element woven in. After earning her MA in creative writing, she formed Daydreamer Entertainment and began self-publishing. Founder of the Right Now Workshop and the new Right Now Workshop podcast, she loves to teach in person and online. Welcome, Kitty, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. This is a chapter I always thought about joining.
Well, we're always here for you.
Nice. So, I was on Mark Dawson's podcast just this past Friday, a couple of days ago, episode 100. And one of the things that James Blatch, who does, I think all of the interviews, was asking me about, was how did you get started on teaching time management? And depending on whether or not you know anything about me, the reason why is because I started moving all over what seemed like all the time. It seemed like I was constantly moving. Andy was just saying that I think that you were saying that you were part of a military family, so you probably know what I mean about moving a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. My husband's in the film industry, and so once he got his first big job, then we were in Australia and then back in LA and then someplace else and then back in Australia and back and forth, and then we just got back from New Zealand, and this week he's having interviews number 3 and 4 for a possible job in Sweden, which
Wow.
I'm super excited. I'm like, please, God, let this be the thing that you want, because it's what we want.
Absolutely. Well, New Zealand was the dream job, but that Sweden would be the dream place to be.
It sounds, fabulous. I mean, I'll have to buy some more cold weather clothes after living in Southern California and Australia for a while, but so the problem is that every time I felt like I was finally getting into a flow, then suddenly, it was off to another job, packing up, calling movers, the whole packing process, even after you've done it a few times and you know what you're going to do, it still just takes forever. And your brain just is not in work mode anymore. You're trying to, it's what we now know, that your brain actually doesn't multitask to the greatest, it's not the best way to work. We can do it, and we do it, but if you find that you have to multitask, as so many of us do, whether or not you have kids or maybe a husband who's already retired or any number of reasons why you can't fully focus on your career, then you have to find ways to make time work for you instead of feeling like you're constantly working against time. In fact, not part of my presentation exactly this morning, but this morning, since this is the Faith, Hope, and Love chapter, and I can talk about faith, this morning I woke up and I just felt just so overwhelmed by the number of things that I need to get done in the next week or two. I'm running a half marathon on Sunday. I'm not entirely prepared for it. I need to do some stuff to get prepared for it. And then there's just a whole bunch of work-related things I need to get prepared for. And my mind there's a back burner that's never being turned off now that's I wonder if we're moving to Sweden. So that's just on a constant low in the back of my mind all the time. And so this morning I woke up and I said, you know what, God, please help me to just remember this is what I love to do. I love teaching. I love writing. I really do love the adventure of the life that I have with my husband, though, we're definitely in a period of feeling tired, just tired. And we all know what it's like to just wake up and feel tired, which is not really a great way to start the day. So on the one hand, we all can call on a sense of power, peace, refocusing, kind of bringing all of that stuff that's outside, either bringing yourself back into that core center where it's you and God and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you kind of remember it, from either 5 minutes ago or 5 hours ago or whatever it is. Or sometimes I like to think of all of that stuff out there as just sort of breaking off and falling away and it's just me and God again and we recenter and we refocus. And so one of the first things that I have on some of the tip sheets that I gave out at various, talks and stuff. And in fact, I was just speaking at one of the Southern California chapters on Saturday. And the very first item that I have on that tip sheet is know the top 3 things that you need to do. Pick the top 3 things that are most important for you to finish today or to do today, and know what the top 3 most important things are that you want to finish for this year. Now, when it comes to week-long, month-long, year-long goals, a lot of that means that you're doing a piece of it several times, like you're doing a whole bunch of pieces until you get to the end. A goal that's just for a day, a lot of times you're going to be able to start it and finish it. Not all the time. Sometimes even that, your time gets broken up. But if you can focus, and a lot of times what I do is I just have a sticky note. This isn't the one. I actually did. You know what? I'll show you the one I actually wrote last night. I started by writing my top 3 things that were most important on my sticky note. My sticky note ended up with 10 things on it. I had to put a star next to the things that were the top 3. So for instance, this is one of the top 3. You have to be ready for meetings and times that you're going to be doing something with other people. I had an interview for my podcast that I did earlier this morning, and then it gets a little fuzzy. I'm like, what's the most important next thing that has to be done before dinner time? So if you can use something like a sticky note system, the thing that I like most about it is that you can start fresh every day. And I really do think it's important for at least those top 3 things that you do start fresh every day. Because whether or not from a faith perspective, you're always sort of aware that God may be moving you in a different direction than what you had thought was going to happen when it was yesterday and you made your list, or just from a life perspective, or maybe something turns out you can't do the thing. Like yesterday morning, I woke up, my husband was primed and ready to go get the car smogged and the oil changed, because we kind of sort of forgot during the holidays that our registration is due in January, early January. So we were like, okay, we got to get it done. And I called, and they had no appointments open, because apparently everybody else had decided not to service their car over the holidays too. So that's, the kind of thing where it was the number 1 thing on the list, and then it just had to move off of the day altogether. So sticky notes are great, because then at the end of the day, and I do the sticky note thing, and then I use a program called Asana, ASANA.com. It took me a while to figure out how I wanted to use this program and if I really wanted to use it. But basically, I don't know about you guys, but I am a list maker. So these are all 4 pages of different lists I've made of things that I want to accomplish before the end of 2018. This one's just writing related. I know I can't do all of these things, but I need to write everything down in order to choose what are the top 3 writing related things that I am really going to focus on this year. Because if you're at all like me, you have so many ideas for things that you want to do. You have a huge mental list of things that you feel like you need to do. I don't know how many other people feel like their website really needs to be updated. Mine does. So even if you're not a list maker, it's inside your head. So whether it's on paper or inside your head, you still have a lot of things that you're thinking, I need to do this and this and this and this. And the other thing that I try to make a big point of when I'm teaching time management and project management tips is we have a tendency, and not everybody, but a lot of writers that I know, we have a tendency to not be fully in the moment when we're with other people. And so other people feel like we're not fully paying attention to them when we're with them. It's totally cool to be working on, say, an image that you want to create to put on your blog post or something while you're watching TV. But if you're watching your favorite TV show with your spouse, that this is the thing that you do together, and you look up and go, oh my gosh, what just happened? It's not going to take long for them to be like, seriously, don't ask me anymore. Either watch the show or don't watch the show, as an example. Or, the kids with a sporting event or a musical event or whatever. It's one thing if you're like, okay, we're going to make a family plan. What are the most important things for you this year? And you, however many people are in your family. And I think that this actually works really well, having kind of a family meeting to discuss, like, this year I really need to write these 2 books and work on my podcast. Those are the most important things. It's going to take me this kind of time, and these are the sorts of hours, and I need to feel like people are supporting me, not resenting me. I'm sure that there's a lot of like amen sisters sometimes with some of these things. But also we need to remember that all the other people in our immediate circle of life, whether they're friends, family, or whatever, the people that we're spending the most amount of time with in our year, those people also need to feel like we're supporting them, and that we don't resent the time that they're taking away from us in our writing, because we're all wanting to feel like we're the center of somebody's attention sometimes. We're important to the people that we find important in our lives. And so some of the other things that I have written down as things that I need to keep in mind are, what are my top distractions? I get lost in my own little world so often that my husband I had a hearing issue, and not so much a problem exactly, but when I was a little kid, a lot of little kids will have hearing problems, and parents will have to decide, are we going to do something about it or see if they outgrow it? And I outgrew it. But there was a lot of teasing and not nice behavior. And so I'm really sensitive about if anybody is kind of shouting at me or anything like that. It just kind of goes back to that. So my husband just, I think twice already today, or maybe one of the times was yesterday, he'll start talking to me about something, and I'll say, huh, or what did you say, or what was the first part of that, or whatever. And he acts like I couldn't hear him. And then he talks really loud and slow. And then it just grates on my nerves. And I'm like, okay, you know what? You just need to remember to just call my name, wait for me to answer, and get back to earth. It just takes 2 seconds, and then I will be fully engaged in what you had to say. And those sorts of moments remind me that that I do that sometimes when it's not fair to the other person, when I'm supposed to have been engaged with them. So if we can keep track of the times when we really owe it to other people out of love and respect to be fully engaged with them, and ask them or explain to them what that means to us, I think that we'll end up having a lot more energy, which will feel like more time, because there's less frustration, resentment, things like that. Also, it's super important. It's funny how this is going to be a time saver if you can train the people who live in your house, and also train anyone who thinks that you should answer the phone immediately or you must be dead. People need to understand that their 30-second question might be 30 seconds for them, but it's 2 or 5 or 10 minutes for us. Like, you've taken me totally out of what I was thinking about. I might have lost the rest of the dialogue forever, and I'll have to just remake up a new dialogue, which, I mean, it's fine. It's fiction, right? But you're in the zone, and then you have to figure out, well, where was I going with that? When people can understand that you need to not be interrupted unless there's blood or fire, sometimes it'll help you, even if it's for an hour at a time. In fact, even when I go on writer retreats with other writers, we've actually taken pieces of paper, just regular paper, and folded them, long ways so that they can form like a little table tent. And on one side, it will be, I can talk. And on the other side, it says, don't interrupt me, please, or whatever. And we use those as a way for other people to know, like, whether or not it's a good time to engage in conversation. So we just need to train the people around us. That will save us all of those little 30 seconds that become 5 minutes. That will save us that kind of time, and also the frustration and just the trying to get back into a flow or a thought or a rhythm or whatever. And then for ourselves personally, what are our own personal distractions? So for instance, right this second, so I've been training for 3 months for a half marathon that's happening on Sunday, for probably the last 4 weeks at least. One of my distractions is something hurts. I need to stretch, or I need to move, or I need to find another way to sit or stand or move to a different area or whatever. It seems like I'm constantly having to move. I can't sit for a long time without things hurting, which actually is not such a bad thing because we shouldn't be sitting so long. I've got a podcast coming up on my podcast where I interviewed my sister, who's an occupational therapist, and I asked her, like, how long exactly? Like every 30 minutes, every 60 minutes? And she's like, honestly, it's totally individual. But when you can't focus anymore, or you find your mind wandering, or you find yourself shifting all the time, your body and your mind are both trying to tell you, listen, I need a break. I need to walk. I need some more oxygen inside my head in order to think better. But so knowing the difference between a distraction and listening to what your body is saying, or sometimes we have to put a timer on what we're doing. We have 2 hours to do this and 30 minutes to do that and whatever. So depending on how your brain works and how you usually think and how you usually find yourself working the best, like I could give you 100 tips, but only like 14 of them will work for each of you because we're all kind of set up differently. So for instance, what was it that I was thinking just in the last 2 days? I was thinking if I put a timer on my phone, it might have actually been like prayer time or something. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, I have this much time and that's it, but I don't want to be clock watching. And so I put a timer on my phone so it would go off in, 24 minutes or whatever it was. But there's an exercise called plank where you're trying to make your body totally straight. And it's sort of like a push-up position, but on your elbows. It's horrible. I hate it very, very much. For me, I just cannot not know how many seconds left until I can fall to the ground. Yes, Angela's understanding. So for that, I want to watch my clock. I want to watch it and just know 4 seconds, 3 seconds, collapse. So there's so many different ways that we already do things. If we can just sit down for a minute and think, what's the usual way that I do things when it comes to timing and basically anything in our lives where we have certain habits, certain ways that we just happen to do things. If we can continue to keep up with those same, I'll just say personality traits, even though it's not fully personality, in our writing life, then I think that we're going to also be able to feel like our time is expanding. It doesn't always work for everyone, but if you're in a position where if you're a morning person and you can write and be creative in the morning, you're going to feel like you're getting more done than if you force yourself to stay awake, until 10 or 11 o'clock. By 10 o'clock, I'm usually asleep. So the idea of writing from 9 to 11 p.m. just makes me think, oh my gosh, how would I ever write anything that made any sense? But sometimes you're in a position in life where you have to take what you've got and that's all you've got. And so then again, there's a lot of things that you can just sort of, at least for a while, retrain your mind or tell yourself for this amount of time, like whether it's a day or a week or a several year period in life, like if you have a little kids or something like that and you have a certain schedule and that's your schedule, it's going to be your schedule. Then we just sort of have to get our self-talk and the way that we choose to think. Now, again, it's kind of great talking to you guys because I can use all of the things that I really want to say without having to couch it in some other terms or whatever. But seriously, we need to take every thought captive to Christ. Whatever it is that we're supposed to be doing in the moment, if we're feeling like, I don't want to do it, I'm tired, I just feel cranky and whatever, I have a tendency to let myself kind of feel that way for a few seconds, depending on how much I've been doing it that day, or a minute or whatever. But there's a point at which you just have to say, no, I'm not going to feel that way right now. Or, our whole lives have trained us to have these different emotions and thoughts and feelings about things that a lot of times are not even actually related to the possible problem or challenge that we're facing right now. Like if somebody speaks to me really loudly, as if making me think that they think that I can't hear them, and that just sets off a reaction that started when I was 6 years old. I have to just say, no, I'm not going to feel that way. I'm not going to be offended or angry or hurt or feel like they're pushing my buttons on purpose, because um, all of the control that we have in our lives, so much of it is in fact in our head. You know, our minds are just so amazing. And the things that, think about it, we take nothing and we make it into something. That is exactly what God did. So it's amazing that we can do these things. And therefore we need to believe that it's amazing how much control we do have and can have. So, and again, all of these things are really related. Do you mind if I share my screen for a second, Tanya?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. So I created this little handout sort of thing. Wow, you can tell that I have a lot of things open, or at least I can tell I have a lot of things open. Okay, that's really weird that I can't figure out where Word is. Let me see if I can. I'm going to not share screen. Okay, I'm just going to show you something on the screen. Okay, so I created this kind of little handout for the, trying to get it straight. There we go. For the chapter that I was speaking at on Saturday. It's just a Venn diagram and trying to show that goal setting and time management and project management, these things are actually all interrelated. And sometimes just two of them are touching on each other, but there's a big space in the middle where all three of these things are related. And I think that all the things that have to do with our mind and our body, does anybody remember when you were a little kid, there was the Schoolhouse Rocks little mini, they were almost like little commercial breaks, but they were teaching kids different things. Okay, and then a bunch of bands in the 90s, I think, created an album. It was actually a double album set that took all those little songs and they made them like into like a rock song sort of thing. And it's just called Schoolhouse Rocks. It's absolutely fabulous. Blind Melon did one. And I think, yeah, they're so, so good. The fact is that, I mean, it's really good music. And so there's one called 3 is the Magic Number. And he talks about, you know, the heart and the brain and the body. It's 3. And, you know, and then there's the Trinity. And then in marriage, you know, there's the husband and the wife and God making up the threefold cord. And anyway, so there are so many things that are already kind of pre-wired into the way that we think that I really feel strongly that if we can find ways to tap into how our hearts and minds and brains are working together with the gifts that we have, that we know we want to use, that we think that we're being asked to use, then we'll be able to actually have a lot more satisfaction and control over our time. It may or may not make us more productive because life just happens. I was totally on a roll with this one book, and my husband called me and said he was laying on the pavement. He had just been hit by a semi on his motorcycle on the way to work. That changed my year entirely. It changed actually a few years of our life entirely. So things do happen, but we can find so much more satisfaction if we just try to remember that we have the ability to choose whether or not we're going to be satisfied. So in with that, while you're choosing, what are your top 3 things that you need to do today? What are the top 3 things that you want to accomplish this year? Knowing that at any time, you can hit the restart button, you can change any of those things. But also, what are your top 3 distractions? What are the top 3 things that it seems like is always pulling you away? You know, for one person, it might be social media, in which case what you want to do is, instead of being a firefighter, waiting until there is a fire and putting it out, is you want to find some preventative maintenance way of knowing what to do if you realize, oh, I'm about ready to get stuck in this. So for instance, there's a program called Freedom, which the last few times I've checked, it's still only for Mac, but I'm sure that there are other programs for the other operating systems. And it's a program where you can set it up to make your internet be disconnected from, say, 10 a.m. to noon, or that your internet is not, we only have, oh, I thought it said 1 minute left, 10 minutes. Okay.
10 minutes.
Okay. Where your internet entirely is either turned off for X amount of time, or certain websites you're not allowed to access, which also could be helpful if, say, social media is an issue for you. If one of your distractions is people and sounds and noise and movement, I tend to be, I didn't really notice it until I was in a writers, it's kind of like a little mini conference, but at a writer's house. And one of my friends later said, every time that bird makes a noise or moves around in his cage, you keep looking over there. You're so distracted by like the sound and the movement. And I'm like, oh, I never really thought about it. But once I got that idea in my head, I was like, oh, you're right. So this year I bought some noise canceling headphones, and it has made a huge difference. The other thing that I did is I bought a subscription. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but it's like an annual payment plan to a website called Focus at Will, where they have like this music that is set to help your brain waves to either be more creative or more relaxed or, more energy. And you can choose what level of brain activity you want. And I put some of this music on when I'm writing, and I've got my noise canceling headphones, and the rest of the world is just gone, which is awesome. So that's another way that you might be able to get more done. If you can find out what some of your distractions are and make a plan in advance for either what you'll do if they start to happen, or maybe you'll give yourself, if you can be at least in control enough that you know that if I set a timer and the timer goes off, I know I'll leave. But otherwise it might be something like I just can't do it, or I need to work on a different computer. Some people just have a writing computer. It's not connected to anything, anything that might distract them. So many things that I want to tell you. Let me just stop for a breath, take a drink of water, and ask, does anybody want to turn their microphone on and have any questions before I continue?
I just want to recap really quick. So your 3 suggestions, the first one is to list the top 3 things that you want to accomplish in a day on a sticky note so that you can chalk them off your list. And I would add to that I've been using a program that Angie actually encouraged me to use. It's a planner called iBloom. And I've been noticed, and I've used it now for over a year, and I've noticed that the more overwhelmed I feel, and the more I write it down, when I start writing it down, I realize there's not as much to do, and I can't accomplish this in a day. So anyway, that first thing is writing down the top 3 things you want to accomplish in a day, writing down the top 3 things that you want to accomplish for the year, correct?
That's right.
The second tip is, I'm sorry, I lost it.
One of them also had to do with talking to your family to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what everybody finds is most important to them.
Right. And then the third tip was finding your distractions, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And having a plan in advance for what you can do to either avoid them, take care of, nip them in the bud when they happen. And some of your distractions are going to be things that you're thinking, well, I can't do anything about that. One of my friends, so I don't have any kids, but one of my friends is a homeschooling mom, and I think she actually got this idea from some homeschooling people. In fact, she lives in Arizona people. So when her kids were at a certain age, and sorry, I don't have kids, so I'm not sure I want to say, that big, but that doesn't mean anything. When they were at a certain age when they could be left alone and they were perfectly safe to be in the same house, but she could be in her office with the door closed, but they would then never leave her alone. And so the homeschooling co-op or whatever, somebody found this idea where you help the kids, you create cool little cards, they're homemade and they're decorated by each kid, and each kid gets 3 cards, 3 interruption cards. And so if mom has a 2-hour block and each kid has 3 cards, aside from, fire and blood, they can interrupt 3 times. But when the 3 cards are used up and, mom keeps them, then they can't interrupt again until the end of her writing time. So that can be that, or something like it can be a great way to keep people who normally want to interrupt you, now that you say, don't interrupt me, from feeling like they're not being totally kept out of your life. But at least 3 interruptions times 2 kids is 6 interruptions is better than, the 12 or 18 or 20 that she had before.
Right.
So, and I'm sure that does, do some things to help kids, prioritize, in their own minds. Is this worth, my one chance or whatever? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there's all sorts of ways that you can use that for other purposes. I'm going to try one more time to share my screen and see if I can find this. There it is. Okay. One of the things that I do to plan out my entire year. Can everybody see this? It's a
yes.
January. Okay, so one of the things that I teach in my class is we go through my, I say all of us, each of us together, go through and list down every single goal. Like I showed you my 4 pages of things that I, would love to get done in 2018. Then we try to figure out how much of that we actually have time to do and how much of it has to be moved to next year. And then I have people break things down into pieces and put them on sticky notes because sticky notes are movable. It makes you feel like it's okay, things can change. I personally have a mental block about scribbling out ink. And then there's always the scribbled out section that is a reminder that I didn't do something that I said I was going to do at the time that I was going to do it. It just bothers me. So sticky notes are constantly movable. And I bought a pack of 10, and you can see I put a little legend at the top for what kind of an item each of the colors was. And then I would plan all these things out on my calendar, and at a glance, I can tell, okay, I'm teaching an online class. I'm doing an awful lot of communication stuff, which would be like blogs and newsletters and stuff. I'm not out of town at all. And there's one item that says other work. And so I have to look at that one and actually read it because it's under my sticky note system that says other work. So things like this can help us to have a better idea of what's going on at a glance. Let me just stop sharing here. And keep things organized, but also, for lack of a better word, movable. Because life happens, and sometimes you forget that there was this kid event or something that you had to do that it's in your head, and then you have to do it, but you didn't put it on your calendar, and so you're like, oh crap, I didn't plan for that. So you just have to move your sticky notes, and then you're golden, and you can feel like it's okay, I'm good, I don't feel bad, I didn't screw up, I just moved it, it's all good. Sometimes you just have to also remember to treat yourself as kindly as you treat your children or your best friend or your spouse. I find that a lot of writers I know, we don't really treat ourselves, probably people in general, probably it's human nature, we don't treat ourselves often as kindly as we treat other people. So we're running out of time. So
less than a minute. So I want to thank you very much, Kitty. I think we're going to get cut off in 2 seconds here. Thank you very much for your tips, and you are greatly appreciated. And we'll be sharing I'll be sharing your things some more.
Hi, Kitty.
Bye.
Yeah, great. Nice meeting you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll talk
Thank
to you.
you.
Kitty.
You're welcome. And remember to get the handout.
And where was the handout at?
There's a link in the chat, and I'm sure Tanya can send it to you, or I can send it to Tanya to send to you.
I don't think it's in the chat unless you were on when the link was posted, because I don't see it in
Oh.
It was on there. I don't know what it's still on there. It's the top. It's under the self-publishing formula, episode 100.
Yeah.
I signed in later and it's not on mine. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, there it is. She just
bottom.
posted it. I'm copying it and grabbing it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's nice chatting with you guys.
You too. See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.